So this is the next in the my autumn harvest series. Basically, this is a shorter version of the teaching videos that I like to produce. And this particular video, this lesson, I want to talk about the Great Flood, the flood of Noah. Certainly one of the more controversial subjects, the account of the Great Flood that we read in the scripture. Both inside and outside the church, both believers and non-believers kind of question whether there really was this catastrophic worldwide flood that occurred as it is described in the scripture. So that's what I want to talk about today. So the great flood of Noah, was it the worldwide catastrophe that the scripture tells us about? Like I said, it's one of the more widely disputed accounts that we read in the scripture. The great flood or Noah's flood. Skeptics either refuse to believe that it has any historical basis at all, or probably the more widely and particularly within Christian circles is that, well, there was certainly a flood, a very catastrophic flood, but it was limited, it was local, it was not this worldwide catastrophe that the Bible seems to describe. Well, for those of us who believe there was a global flood, the question is whether we need to just rely on blind faith in what the Bible seems to describe when it says even the highest mountains were covered. Basically, it seems to describe a worldwide flood. Do we have to accept that just on blind faith? Or do we find that there is actually evidence around the world that a global flood, a global catastrophe actually took place in the past? So can we accept it as historically reliable based on that evidence? And there's a surprisingly large amount of evidence that we can analyze, that needs to be considered before any conclusion can be drawn. And certainly in a reasonably brief video like what I'm going to present to you today, I'm not going to be able to show you all the evidence or share with you all the evidence, but as in all of these briefer videos that I'm producing, I'm hoping that it will whet your appetite as much as anything else to take a deeper dive, into the particular subject that we're looking at. So let me share with you a brief video. It's only about 5 or 6 minutes long, and then I'll give a brief summary at the end.
The top 5 reasons the global flood may have actually happened. Number 5, human documented history of the flood. If a global flood happened, you'd expect people around the world in ancient history to have told this story. And they do. Basically, all the people. The Chinese, the Native Americans, the Hindi people, the Sumerians, the Greek, the Aztecs, the Norse people, the story of Atlantis, and of course the biblical story, which is the account of the Jewish people. And their stories are largely similar. God or the gods were mad, and so they flooded the earth, while the hero of the story builds a boat and saved all the people and the animals. Number 4, geologic evidence of a catastrophic flood. There is evidence all over the world of unfathomably massive flooding. For centuries, science taught us that everything we see was the result of slow, steady processes over deep time. Until J. Harlan Bretz took on the scientific elites and proved the great ice dam flood of the Pacific Northwest. You can see the size of these small ripples that are the result of a local flood. And these pictures from the Camas Prairie in Idaho, which is in the path of this Missoula flood, has the same kind of ripples, but the scale is hundreds if not thousands of times larger. Everybody knows the Niagara Falls. This is the Horseshoe Dam, compared to the Dry Falls Formation in Washington, also part of this Missoula flood. The water at the Niagara Falls rushes over the edge at 200,000 cubic feet per second, while the water at this Dry Falls Formation ravaged through at 300 to 400 million cubic feet per second, hundreds of times more water than the Niagara Falls. Imagine the scale. And now that we know that these formations were caused by catastrophic floods, science is finding evidence of these kind of catastrophic floods all over the world, including two that are larger than the Missoula flood. Number 3, oceans underneath the Earth's crust. One of the first questions that comes to mind when thinking of a global flood is, where did the water come from? Which is a good question at surface level. But if you read the biblical account of Noah's flood, it's very clear where the water came from. Genesis 7:11. In the 600th year of Noah's life, on the 17th day of the 2nd month, on that day all the springs of the great deep burst forth. Job 38:8. Who shut up the sea behind doors when it burst forth from the womb?
Where did the water come from?
The Bible clearly says that the floodwaters came from inside of the earth, and scientists have potentially just recently found this water. They now estimate that there's more water underneath the earth's crust than above. How did the author of the Bible get this right over 3,000 years ago? Good guess, Moses. Number 2, the Ice Age. The fact that there was even an Ice Age at all provides strong evidence for a global flood. Why? We all have this idea of what the Ice Age was, the entire Earth covered in snow, but that's not the truth. The Earth was only about 4 degrees colder. However, up to 30% of the Earth was covered in ice, glaciers technically. Today, less than 5% of the Earth is covered in glaciers. So where did all the snow come from to cover 30% of the Earth? What do you need to form ice? Cold and water. If you only have cold, then you just have a cold age, not an ice age. Where did the precipitation come from? At the beginning of this last winter, Buffalo, New York experienced the most massive blizzard in its recorded history, when a lake effect storm caused 60 inches of snow to encase the city. And how did this happen? Freezing cold Arctic air moved south over the warm waters of the Great Lakes. The waters were still warm from the fall, and as the cold air passes over the warm water, it causes evaporation, precipitation. And in the Buffalo blizzard, this created a conveyor belt of snow, as the warm waters meeting the cold air caused the formation of the clouds and precipitation. And this can explain where the water for the Ice Age came from. Models show that if there was a global flood, this event would have created a tremendous amount of energy or heat, largely due to friction. This heat would have dissipated into and of course heated up the oceans, creating this lake effect phenomenon, but on a global scale. Number 1 evidence that a global flood may have actually happened, the fossil record. How is a fossil formed? When an animal dies, the scavengers almost immediately get to work on beginning the process of disassembling the formerly living thing. And this is just the beginning phase of its total decomposition, finished off by bugs, bacteria, and fungi. It's gross, but it's an amazing system for recycling organic material. Because of the efficacy of this recycling process, dead animals stand basically no chance at being preserved in any complete or articulated way. And this is why, in order for something to become a fossil, it basically needs to be rapidly buried by mud or sand, which helps to make sense of the fossils of animals that died while eating, giving birth, and that are found in death poses, arched back before being rapidly covered by mud, sometimes sand. So the very fact that fossils are found all over the earth is compelling evidence for a global, rapid animal burying event, like a flood. It also explains why marine fossils, like whales and sharks, have been found in the middle of deserts and also on the top of Mount Everest, the Himalayas, the highest mountains in the world. So what do you think? Did a global flood actually happen?
So there you have, very quickly, just 5 quick reasons for believing, in fact, that there was just such a global flood as is described in the scripture. Let me just give a quick summary of some of the things that he talked about. Number 1, that there are accounts all over the world. It's no coincidence that virtually every culture on every corner of the globe has an account of a global flood, very, very similar to what the Bible describes. There are twists in the story in each of the different cultures, but the foundational facts of a global flood and the preservation of certain animals and so forth, and a family being preserved, That's pretty universal in terms of all of these accounts. And certainly, I think it would be a stretch to believe that this was just coincidence, that all the different cultures on the four corners of the globe have a similar account of a global flood. Geologically, there is a great deal of evidence. And again, in the video, he presents some of it, but that's not certainly all of it. And as I said at the beginning, if you're interested, I would encourage you to look more deeply into it. But the presence of canyons, and it was, I mean, I know I was raised to believe and schooled to believe that, for example, the Grand Canyon was just, the Colorado River over millions of years finally wearing its way down through the sediment. But two things. Number one, and we'll talk about the sediment in a second, but just the presence of how the sediment appears is an evidence in and of itself. But in terms of the time it takes, we saw, for example, when Mount St. Helens blew, how a canyon was formed in a matter of hours by the force that was generated there, and a lot of it being water, just creating a very big canyon. And certainly a catastrophic event like the Great Flood would cause and create something like the Great Canyon, the Grand Canyon, rather, very, very quickly. The rock layering, for example, that we see not just in the Grand Canyon, but there are certain layers that appear through in large stretches and even across the globe that's very, very similar, that would lend us to believe, would lead us to believe that, again, this worldwide event occurred. And the fact that in between, if you look at, for example, the layers of sediment and rock in the Grand Canyon, you see that there's no erosion in the different layers, which means that those layers had to have been laid down on top of each other very, very quickly. Not like one layer formed and then over a million years another one did. There would have been erosion between the layers. But if they're laid down quickly, that wouldn't happen. And again, we see, for example, in the Mount St. Helens event, where there's this layering down of sediment that hardens into rock with no erosion. And so it lends to the belief that that this is consistent with the account that we read in the scripture. And maybe one of the best reasons to believe it, and of course he used it in the video as his number one reason, is the presence of fossils. A fossil can only be formed when a dead animal or an animal is killed quickly and buried quickly in sediment, and that hardens, obviously, and basically preserves the animal so that the scavengers don't get to it. The fact is that there are literally billions of fossils in the sedimentary rock around the world. And even it was mentioned in the video, even marine animals, the fossils of marine animals are found on mountains, which obviously is evidence that those mountains were covered in water and that it happened quickly, so that these animals, these creatures, were killed and buried quickly. So all of this evidence, and again, this is really barely scratching the surface, but there is in fact a great body of evidence that a flood, a catastrophe involving water, covered the globe and caused the fossils to be formed around the world, caused these geological formations around the world. And the bottom line is, why did this happen? Well, the scripture tells us that God brought the flood to judge the world. There is a God, He is the judge. He is the king over all creation. And we need to heed not only the fact that he gives an account in his word that this happened, but why. I hope this has been edifying. Hope this has been interesting to you. And again, I hope that if so, and if you still have questions or you'd like to learn more, that you'll investigate, because there's a lot more information out there that this particular short video I don't have time to share with you. But I thank you for watching and hope that you'll look for the next short video in my Autumn Harvest series. God bless you.